Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session. This is a session about running automation and hitting the APIs for VMware Cloud on AWS service. So we're going to take a look at how you can actually provision the entire SDDC stack from an API call. I'll also walk you through some of the ways you get that API information that you need through the portal. And then we'll go at another level deep, and we'll actually provision using Terraform to the Vcenter that's within the SDDC. So is everyone here familiar with VMware Cloud and AWS, or do I need to do a quick overview? Just show of hands. Everyone, you know it already. Okay. So this should look pretty familiar. I've already got what we call a software-defined data center. It's already deployed, but through one of the use cases I have is that from a CloudFormation template, I actually want to provision a new SDDC. So the workflow would probably be, for most customers, they would provision an SDDC, and then within that infrastructure, they would then go to vCenter and provision VMs. It could be a use case like DR, for example, or it could be a DevOps use case where they don't want to actually have all the hosts powered on and incur billing, or there just could be other use cases that, around DevOps or anything like that. So to give you an idea of where we actually get the API calls, we have a new feature that's built into the portal. It's Developer Center. So we've got a lot of code samples here. I'll show you a code sample we're going to take a look at. And then we've got the API Explorer. So everything that you can do through the UI, so for example, create an SDDC, power on a host, add an additional host, remove a host, it's all surfaced through a RESTful API as well. And all of that information about all the APIs that we have available are within this Developer Center and the API Explorer. So if I go down here, I can actually take a look and run one of these API commands just to understand what kind of payload that I need in that API call. So here we'll just get the connections, and then from this portal I can actually execute an API call because I'm already logged in and authenticated. So from there I can see whatever connections that we have available within this account, and then I can see my response is in JSON format, but I can kind of dig into it and see information about my particular SDDC. So a lot of times when you're calling one of these APIs, it does need inputs. So this is just an easy, quick way to just find whatever type of inputs it needs as a payload, and then build your APIs through like a Postman or whatever scripted method that you require. And so here, I've taken a look. Let me go back one here. Whoops. Let's go back up a little bit. So one of the things I want to do is actually provision new SDDC, and I can go take a look at that. Let's see. Oops. Now I can take a look at what hosts I have. And then once I build these input informations, what I've gone ahead and done is actually created a new CloudFormation stack. Let me go back here. So I created this stack, and then what I've done is also created a Lambda function that is actually calling our API and building this out. Let me jump into that a little bit here. So once I jump into this Lambda function, whoops, you'll see my inputs here are everything it would require when I actually create a new SDDC. So if I go back to this portal, I can give you an example of what that looks like. So when we create SDDC, it's asking for a lot of input information. Here I'll just say this is test, and then the next thing is going to ask for which AWS account are you using. It's going to ask which VPC do you want it on, which subnet, and then what CIDR block you want. And so what I've done is actually move all of those inputs to this Lambda function. Now, every time I execute this cloud formation, I can have input for, create the SDDC name based on a variable or some auto created, and then all of the account information I can pump into this as well. And then I can also get response back when the SDDC is deployed. I can ping another API to actually get the SDDC org information as well as the Vcenter login, and then proceed to do more levels of automation throughout the process. So it's completely an end-to-end. Where we're going to go and switch gears now, though, is once the SDDC is provisioned through an API, then we'll actually go into Vcenter and start running automation against that. And a popular tool to do that is a tool from HashiCorp called Terraform, so I'm sure you're familiar with using that. So we're going to actually use that against the SDDC that we provisioned. So if I go back into the portal, where I'm actually getting this code sample is built into Developer Center. So we have all these different samples. They're basically like a hello world example of how to run certain automation tasks. It gives you enough information, enough scripting to start, and then you could take that and further build on top of it. So what I've done is I've actually built a example here. So I have a VMware Cloud Terraform example. I've already downloaded that, deployed it. If you also look on, if you look on my website, I've got this as well. Let's see if I can open like 50 more tabs too. So if you go on my website, I've got full instructions how to actually execute this. There's also information about the differences between your on-prem vSphere environment and the SDDC that is deployed in VMware Cloud on AWS. There is a limited rights model within VMware Cloud, so it doesn't allow you to actually provision anywhere. There's certain folders that we have set up that you're allowed to actually provision your workload VMs to. There's also some nuances in the way we're naming the networks, but I've got all the descriptions of those intricacies here, and you can quickly modify the script I have to be able to point to your infrastructure. And then I've put all the code for this out on GitHub, so it's just a GitHub repository, has all the scripts you need to run. What I'm going to do is actually go ahead and show you an example of how this works. So let me go ahead back to my desktop. So I've already downloaded, I've got a session open. So I'm just running, this is actually Photon OS, it's just simple Linux desktop. I've downloaded my code, I've cloned the Git repository, I've installed Terraform, and then I'll just give you a little idea of what the actual Terraform plan looks like. So most of the information is in this MyVM folder. Whoops, no. If I could type. So you see here, I have all the input data that Terraform wants. So the data store, there's a little bit of nuances there too. So you can only actually provision to the workloads data store. If you try to provision to management, it'll fail. And then the compute resource pool, it also has to be under. So I've listed that information here. And then the network, you can see the actual path to it is VMC networks, and then the actual logical network that we created for these VMs. And then the template, the template that you want to deploy to as well. Whoops, I think I went too far. Yeah, so here, the workload data store template is CentOS, and then we close out of this. And now I can go ahead and execute this. Let me actually get this up and running first before I do that. Oops. I gotta log back in. Is it set.local? I've got it wrong. Yeah. Whoops. I can log into this one. It's okay. One sec. I just need to see it. I got it? No, that's all right. Cloud and menu. Oh. Oh, this one. Yeah. I just want to get logged in so you can actually see it provision. So now if I bring this back up, so without logging into the UI, provisioning, clone new machine from template, I can actually do that very scripted through Terraform. And so what I'll do is just apply this. And then you'll see it start creating here. So what this is doing is calling actually the vSphere APIs. So very much the same APIs that you have on-prem. They're the same that we're running here. Just again with those changes that you need to make for the limited rights model. You need to make sure it goes in that folder that I specified, the workloads folder, or as well as the compute resource pool, and then make sure that network path is specified. And then you can run everything through a Terraform script. So I foresee most customers actually using this methodology more often in like a dev test type environment. The provision in the SDDC is probably going to be more of a one-time thing, or it's going to be for customers that are constantly spinning up entire ESX host environments and then tearing them down again. But most of the interaction is going to be at this vSphere level, provisioning VMs, provisioning software-based load balancers. So it just takes a moment to provision this. We should see a new VM pop up as well. Okay. And then after it's provisioned, I'll go ahead and tear it down to just do a destroy plan. Okay. Yeah, so you can see the new VMs here. I named it Terraform Test. And so all I'm doing actually in this particular Terraform example is I'm just provisioning the VM. You could also add a post-provisioning task to actually SSH into that VM and then push a payload down to it, pull from GitHub. But this is more just to get you kicked off into how to actually get the VM up and running. And then after that, there's a lot of scripts out on GitHub or the internet that show how to actually install like a database or web server within the Linux guest. And this works too as well for Windows machines. So this isn't just a Linux technology. This can also provision like Windows, and then Terraform has plans and scripting for those environments too. That's almost done. Then if it's taken too long, we actually have a cool feature here too. Is you can just go ask support what's going on. But we'll leave them alone today. Not sure why it's taking so long, but we'll get done in a sec. And then that CloudFormation stack example that I mentioned, it's actually documented here as well. So if you go out to GitHub and search for CloudFormation template for VMware Cloud and AWS, it should come right up. And then there's also a Terraform. So if you don't want to use CloudFormation to provision the initial SCDC, you could also use Terraform to do it. So if you wanted like end-to-end all Terraform type of scripting, you could do that. Or you could use CloudFormation to provision the SCDC, and then you can also use CloudFormation to provision the VMs. It just depends on your preference for whatever scripting technology. Yeah, see, everything's here. Very quick, like 4 or 5 steps to get it up and running. Same with the Terraform example. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so all the actual plans are here available. You can go in and modify them. Let's see. Yeah, so it's looking for the access key, the secret and private key. Yep. Let's go. So that's done. Now it's powering on. And give it just a minute, and then the plan will actually complete. Once it's powered on, it has an IP address. So CentOS 6 coming up now. One of the things I really like about Terraform is, especially with like VMware provisioning, it can understand the state that the VM is in. So it actually waits until it gets a response from VMware tools, because it is talking to the Vcenter API. So it's pulling information constantly to see when that actually came up, instead of you having to go in and script all the timing and get it right, have a pause or a wait. It actually knows that, okay, that machine is up, VMware tools is up, it's alive, it's healthy. Now go on to the next step, which would be whatever my payload is. So install Docker, install a container, or install, MySQL, whatever the next part is. Oh, so the question is, how do you authenticate Terraform to Vcenter? So I actually have a private file in there. Let me see. Let's see. That's done. So I have this Terraform TF VARs, and then within there is the Vcenter server name, the Vcenter username, and the Vcenter password. Obviously, I can't show you now because this is our live environment, but I can show you here in the. Yeah, it's one of the steps to just create that password file, and then that keeps it safe. And then if you do though upload to GitHub, you probably know this as someone who uses Terraform, it'll actually remove that by default, so you don't leave it out there. So you'd have to actually, when you pull this from GitHub again, you're gonna have to recreate that variable file with the password in it. It's just a safety precaution. So you can see that's up. It actually executed that, and then we can take the same in reverse here. And then just go ahead and destroy this. And you'll see it'll start talking to Vcenter. It'll queue up and power off the machine, delete it. So it's powering off now. Now it's gone. Plan's complete. So yeah, without any logging into the UI, complete automation end to end. So again, not just provisioning the SDC, but then once you get it provisioned, you go inside Vcenter, go ahead, do automation against that. This is just one of many tools though, so it's again just a preference of what you like. We also support Power CLI and PowerShell. If that's a preference, we support Python, other, any pretty much pick your flavor. We support that as a scripting engine. It just with developers lately, well, we've seen a high uptick in wanting to use Terraform, so we're starting to build a lot more content around that. And then we've also, with the partnership with Amazon, we've got a lot of customers who were traditional Amazon, and then they would like to use their own CloudFormation tools that they're accustomed to actually provision this environment and provision VMs within the vSphere environment. So that's it for me. Any questions I can answer? Was it pretty straightforward?
You mentioned your website. Where would we get the URL for that?
So if you go to, it's just vm2cloud.com, and then just search for Terraform on VMC, it'll come right up. Or just Google it, it comes up there as well. Yeah, and then if you find anything cool, go ahead and just, if you follow Twitter, my Twitter URL is at vm2cloud. So if you build on this and you have something you're putting on GitHub, either share it on the code Slack channel and make sure everybody knows about it. I'd love to see this is just kind of the first step. I took a quick stab at it to try and get something provisioned, but I'd love to see more like provisioning a multi-tiered app from this, or an end-to-end Terraform with complete SDC and then VMs and infrastructure inside of it. So hit me on Twitter if you come up with something like that. It'd be cool. All right, thank you.